So as Bjorn said, I'm Megan, and along with Gia, who's in the back, and Annie Wood, we're the co-organizers of First Fridays, and really excited to have you all here today for today's conversation, The Stories of Farmers. So here in the Fargo-Moorhead area, we live in the heart of agriculture. Millions and millions of pounds of food are grown all around our community every year, but many of us are disconnected from the act of growing food. If we were to host this conversation 100 years ago in this same community, it would have been pointless because nearly every person in this auditorium would have had a personal story to tell because nearly each of us would have been farmers. Today, in the United States, just 2% of the workforce is directly engaged in farming. We're welcoming 4 farmers to the stage today who will share their stories about the food they grow and sell directly in our community. We ask them to share their path, their stories, and what they feel is most important for the work that they do. One thing we particularly ask them to share is why they farm, because we found that to be one of the most interesting pieces of a farmer's story. And as you're probably going to hear today, the life of farming, as romanticized as it sometimes might be, is not always easy. In fact, it rarely is. But the people who choose to live this life are deeply motivated that the act of growing food is powerful and important. Would you all please join me in welcoming Sam Rydell, Amber and Ross Lockhart, and Jaclyn Weber to the stage.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Good morning.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay, so in wanting to talk about what compels me to farm, I think 2 important sort of factors in my journey are that 1, I did not grow up on a farm, and 2, I did not study agriculture in college. And I'm very appreciative of that, actually. For me personally, that's been very beneficial because I came into it completely ignorant. I knew nothing, but it allowed me to come into it with a completely open mind to be open to learning about what is the best way to grow food. And it allowed me to look at the people that have done it before me or the people that I learned from to figure out what is the best way to do that. And so I didn't start farming until I was 25, and I didn't start farming to farm, and I started farming to get out of a previous career. And it just happened to work, and through working on other people's farms, I had the pleasure to work on a few farms across the country, and learning from those farmers, learning why they were farming, how they were farming, really developed the passion in me to continue to grow food for my neighbors, wherever that may be. And through those experiences, I learned the importance of local food, of growing food for the community that you're growing in, growing it in a way that's doing the least amount of destruction to the soil, which I've learned is so important, and it's often more important to focus on that than the actual crops themselves. So for 3 years I spent farming in other places, and I saw this trend. The first farm I worked at was north of Minneapolis, and at the time, this was only a few years ago, Minneapolis was booming with, they had 40 plus farmers markets and an overabundance of CSAs. And I could see Fargo was on a similar path. At the time, the Red River Market was just starting up. Hodo and Mezzaluna were, highlighting local produce, and you could tell people were interested in knowing where their food was coming from, whether that's at a restaurant or stuff that they were making at home. And so it developed this desire in me to come back here and to start growing in the community that provided me with so much growing up. And so I have such a sense of pride to be back here and to be able to grow food for neighbors, for people that provided me with so much when I was growing up, and it drives me every day to do that in a way that is sustainable, and that in a way that ensures that we have the fertile soil that we do for the long-term future. And so I think there's a great potential to increase the amount of food that we're eating in this community to be grown here. We're one of the most fertile areas in this country, and I think it would be great if we could use more of that to feed ourselves and the people in this community. And so I thank you for your support in me getting started and everything that's sort of happened over the last few years to get us to where we're at. And I think there's a bright future ahead to eat more food that's grown not so far away. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Amber Lockhart, and I am half of the team at Heart and Soil Farm. And we have a small-scale organic vegetable farm just 25 miles north of Fargo. And this was a really exciting year for us. This was our first year of growing and living on our own farm that we own. So it was a pretty cool year. And we sell to the farmers market. We have a CSA. We do wholesale to the co-op and a few restaurants. And we've been growing since 2013, right? And so my journey is really similar to Sam's. I have no agriculture background. I never intended to live on a farm or be a farmer. In fact, when Ross and I met, he grew up on a farm, and I said, if you want a farm wife, I'm probably not the girl for you. But little did I know. But after high school, I went off to pursue culinary arts in Maryland, and so I've always loved food. And even though that wasn't quite the right path for me, it really kicked off this sort of lifelong romance with food. And so Ross and I, after college, we moved to the West Coast for warmer winters, and there we encountered people talking about food in a different way than we remember growing up here in the Red River Valley. And they talked a lot about local food and where does your food come from and how is it grown and do you know your farmer and how are the farm workers being treated and what's the environmental impact of how the growing is done. And so we got really interested in that and started talking more about it and thinking about it. We realized we wanted to do something about that, and for us, that meant giving it a try, growing. So we had a chance after our daughter Stella was born to move back to the area, and we had access to land, which is a huge barrier for new and beginning farmers. And so with that land, we decided to get our hands dirty and give it a try. And so that's kind of been our journey, and I have to say that it's been really great. There's ups and downs. It's challenging. It can be really difficult, but it's also incredibly fulfilling. So for me, farming has meant three things. One, it's about the environmental impact and how we use our soil and how we treat the dirt that we grow in. And if we're not going to leave the land better than we got it, we at least try to do no harm. And so it's sort of our own quiet activism. And then two, it's about community building, which it sounds like you talk about a lot here at First Fridays. It's about growing for our community. It's about feeding our families and our neighbors. And it's incredibly fulfilling to grow something and shepherd it through the whole process of its life and harvest it and hand it to somebody that's gonna take it home, and they're gonna feed their families with that and the people they love, and they're gonna talk about it. There's that real sense of community around food. Food is sort of what connects us all together. It's the focal point of our celebrations, which on Thanksgiving we'll remember as stuffing our faces. And finally, it's about our daughter, who's actually here today up in the back. We wanted her to learn where her food comes from and how to grow her own food and how to be a little bit more self-sufficient and to understand that sort of community aspect behind food. And we've had a lot of fun being back here in the Fargo-Moorhead area as the local food movement has really taken off, and to get to know all these people. And I recognize so many faces in the crowd, and it's so wonderful to be part of that community. So now I'll hand it off to Ross, and he'll tell you his side of the story.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Ross, the other co-farmer at Heart and Soil Farm. Amber says I have a tendency to ramble, so I had to get all of my comments onto an index card. So yes, unlike Sam and Amber, I did grow up on a farm, what we consider a traditional sort of production agriculture farm here in the Red River Valley. Our current farm is actually 7 miles from the farm that I grew up on. So technically I'm a 4th generation farmer. But I didn't always set out to become a farmer. Growing up in a farm family, it seemed like not a very smart career path. It seemed like it was a dead end, and it had a lot of hardships and things that were completely outside of your control, like the weather or the commodity markets. So I decided to try something else. And when Amber came into my life, she was fully on board with trying something else. And so we moved away. But I guess, leaving the farm was really when I sort of had this realization that the role of the farmer is to grow food. And that may sound funny because, I grew up on a farm and that's sort of what we do, right? But I think there's such a disconnect between the way agriculture is done today, between what you grow and how it's used and where it ends up. The relationship with the, I don't want to trash on conventional growers or production egg producers, but your relationship with your product sort of ends at a certain point. You don't know what happens to it, where it goes and how it's used. And I found that a little bit uncomfortable. And I guess, what really interested me was kind of this nexus between where, food, farmers, and human health kind of come together. And so that really got me interested in the whole idea of coming back and starting a small-scale vegetable farm. I think our measures of success are different too. Growing up on a big farm, if you will, it seemed to me, and I could be way off on this, but it seemed like the measures of success were, how many acres you could accumulate, how many combines you had, or how many bushels you could produce. And to me, that really didn't really resonate with me very much. And so that was another reason why I kind of left the farm. But starting Heart and Soil Farm, we've set out to kind of set up different kind of measures of success. I think it's already been mentioned here, but what we focus on our farm is flavor and taste. We try to find things that grow well here, but also people like to eat. And then, the whole soil health aspect is a cornerstone of our farm. Obviously, the name of our farm is Heart and Soil Farm. So, that really, to us, that really goes hand in hand with the nutritional aspect of what we grow. So those are kind of what we focus on, and the measures of success for us. If we're focusing on those things and we're delivering that, we feel like we've done our job well. But it is a challenging career, nonetheless. We're at a point in our farm evolution that we're having trouble meeting demand, because yes, the local food movement is growing here in the area, but we're 2 people on a 3-acre vegetable farm. So we're kind of trying to find ways to both meet that demand, but also not, just kill ourselves, overworking ourselves in the process. Our marketing costs are a lot higher, I think, because we have to spend a lot of time out in the community, talking to people, attending farmers markets, going to meetings like this, and getting the word out about what we do and how we do it. And so that takes us away from spending time on the farm, which is where we should be right now. And it's exhausting work. We're at the point in the year where things are winding down, but we're just exhausted. We're so ready to be done for the year, and we're kind of having those reflective questions right now about, should we keep doing this? I'm 24 years old. Look at me. I look like I'm 40. I'm not 24. A little older than that. But it's a fulfilling occupation. As Amber said, seeing our products being enjoyed by the people who buy them and talking to them about what they did with our food is really fulfilling and really a tangible benefit that we're hopefully bringing to the community. And I think that brings with it some accountability as well. We have to answer to our customers because they look us in the eye and tell us whether they like something or didn't like it. And so a big part of our CSA is, getting feedback from our members to see what they liked and maybe what we could do differently. And finally, the community aspect is hugely important. We're so happy to see almost a full house here this morning to listen to a bunch of farmers ramble on. I mean, that's really exciting, and thank you so much for being here and shop local. Thank you. All right, I'll turn it over to Jaclyn.
Hi, I'm Jaclyn Weber of Folcstede Farms. I'm going to echo a lot of what's already been said, which is really meaningful stuff. My story starts in a garden, the garden of my youth, where I picked raspberries and pulled weeds for allowance. I can remember, I have very vivid memories of stealing watermelons and hiding behind my garage and then eating them in their entirety. It's actually not a very good memory. I probably learned how to can vegetables and bake bread before I knew how to pedal a bike. Many years down the road, when I bought a house, the first thing on my list of to-do was to plant a garden. And right about the time I was digging up a 10 by 10 foot food patch in my yard, Thor, who is my partner in farm crime, was 40 miles north on the farm where his grandmother used to be. And he was preparing several acres of land for a pretty outstanding food journey. So, by the time my path crossed Thor's path, he had already been running one of the area's first CSAs for several years. He had me at, I'm a CSA farmer. I had him at, I'm an English teacher with my summers off. Yeah, farm labor and newsletters all in one. So anyway, with the help of some really, really hardworking and dedicated interns, Thor and I packed up loads and loads of boxes of produce and shipped it out and spent our Saturdays at markets. It was some of the hardest work I've ever done in my life. It really was. But it was also very meaningful work. Purposeful as it may be, several years ago, Thor and I laid our CSA to rest and moved here to the city. It's a wonderful city to be. Farm, however, is as much a verb as it is a noun, and so moving to the city did not mean that we were going to stop growing at all. In fact, we're kind of working on an urban food forest. If you visit our house in August, you would see that it looks like we're hiding behind a jungle. It's fun. So Megan asked, why do we grow? Why do we keep growing, having stopped something that's really hard work to run a CSA? And I have lots of reasons. We have lots of reasons. Some of them are pretty simple, some are kind of complicated. But I think, and the English teacher in me has to come out at some point in time, so here it is. In this world of warring countries and enemy neighbors and planetary neglect, we grow because it keeps us connected, keeps us mindful of our planet's health, of all the complex systems that really rely upon that health. It gives us a reverence for the soil health, for the nutrient dense foods that can be grown when our soil is well cared for. And also, there are so many meditative benefits to just digging our hands into that soil, especially when the sun's setting. We have so much sky. We also continue to grow because it connects us to a community. I have an endless list of gratitude for our time running a CSA, but at the top of that list is becoming a part of a community of members who would brave the seasons with us. What an honor to be a part of their food journey and food stories. We cultivated far more than food. What we cultivated was friendships with like-minded people who really care about the health of the planet, their bodies, and healthy food systems. And finally, we continue growing because we're really passionate about the dance, the seeding, the growing, the harvesting, the preservation, the preparing. Thor and I fell in love in the garden. We did. We threw open our garden gates and our kitchen doors, and we welcomed in our family, our friends, and our communities. We set a place at our table for anyone who wanted to join. And that's something that we cannot stop. It's a part of our moral fiber, the fabric of our being, and it feeds us and it gives us purpose. And we have like 300 pounds of seed still from running a CSA, and hundreds and hundreds of tea stakes that need to be used. And that's how we do it.
All right. Wow, what heartfelt, amazing presentations you all gave. Thank you so much. So for those who are new to First Fridays, this is a time when you can ask questions of our 4 presenters today. So if you want to just raise your hand and I can call on you. Yeah, Travis.
Hi, Travis Rosebooth from Folcstede. Wondering that, is there any authors or minds that you guys have read or something that really influenced you to think this way? And if so, what would be some of the minds that you guys were influenced by?
We can probably all speak to this. I'm going to say Wendell Berry, and then Animal, Vegetable, Miracle.
Barbara Kingsolver.
Thank you, Barbara Kingsolver. Joel, your mom introduced me to that book.
I'm going to steal this one right off the bat. Elliot Coleman was a really important influence in our journey. I grew up on a farm, but I didn't know how to grow vegetables. So his work and some of the works that have come after his model have really been influential. I won't steal all the good ones.
Yeah, you each have one.
I get one. I took the big ones.
Well, I have to echo the Wendell Berry. Sometimes we get really bogged down in the labor of what we do, and that is what tires our souls, our beings. And I'm reading Wendell Berry, who is sort of the philosopher, poet, farmer, really brings that back to you and reminds you why you're doing it when your body tells you please stop.
I would speak specifically to one of Wendell's books, The Unsettling of America. That's one that I read early on in my farming career, and it really spoke a lot to a lot of the issues that not only farmers are facing, but rural communities a lot, in terms of farmers getting bigger, farmers not being able to support themselves and having to move to cities. And so that one it's very broad in its reach in terms of all the issues that he speaks about, and it's very moving. So I'd recommend that.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes.
Carson Olep with Senator Tina Smith's office. Question about the Farm Bill, two questions actually. Are you following the current debate and the conference committee and anything that you are worried about or excited about in the current proposed Farm Bill? And is there anything that you want to see in an ideal Farm Bill in the future to help people like yourself?
Who would like to respond to that?
So I went to MSU for political science. So. We're following it a little bit. You know, unfortunately, it's gotten caught up in committee, and it's not going anywhere until after the election. Unfortunately, the House version of the bill is really bad for farmers, especially young and beginning farmers. I think the Senate version does a lot more for preserving some of the programs that farmers like us utilize on a regular basis, like the EQIP program, the Conservation Reserve program, and then some of the loan programs that the FSA, the Farm Service Agency, uses to help small and beginning farmers. So we'd like to see those preserved. The other side of the Farm Bill is always the sort of the food stamp. I shouldn't say that. The SNAP program, and Megan's can speak to this a lot better. But you know, it should be hand in hand with our Farm Bill. People who are food insecure should have that ability to go out and buy healthy produce from small farmers. So maybe making access to healthy local food would be a priority. I would like to see in the Farm Bill. Yeah, I guess, does that answer your question?
Great, thank you.
Any other comments from the panel? Okay. Next question. Yeah, Noelle.
Do you guys have product for sale yet this fall? And if so, how do we get it?
I have about 10, no. We have potatoes in the ground and carrots in the ground. Yeah, you have to come and dig them up yourself. They're in the mud.
Now's a great time for root vegetables and squash. I'm basically down to root vegetables, and you can find those at Mezzaluna and Birnbaum's, a couple of great local eateries. So I'd recommend going there and seeing how they're using them.
Jaclyn, do you have some food available?
I don't know if I'd call it food. I have a lot of tea. Part of what happens, it's not there. Part of what happens in my yard, my jungle yard, is I've got a lot of herbs growing, and I make tea. So I don't formally have a venue for selling it, but if anyone ever stops over at my house and says, give me a lot of tea, I make up lots of fun mixes like digestive aid teas and such. Or if you're having skin ailments and need to come find me and say, give me some of your salve, I'd be happy to do that. I'm trying to rewild Moorhead with calendula, which spreads like wildfire, but is also one of the best ways to get vitamin D on the outside of your body, aside from sun, which we lack here in the Northland. So come on by and talk to me.
I would like to second that, take her up on that offer. Her kitchen and her farm is so cool. So go visit Jaclyn. So kind of a theme that you all talked about. Oh, did you have some? Okay. I thought you might share. Hidden food. So a theme that you guys all spoke to was care for the earth and care for the soil. And I know that the term organic gets used a lot with thinking about that concept, but none of you are certified organic to my knowledge. So I was hoping that you could each just speak to a little bit about what methods you use to preserve the earth and care for the soil, and then how do you know that you're successful? What do you see in your soil and in your lands and in your food that helps you know what you're doing is right?
So our vegetable farm is not certified organic. We do have 65 acres that is sort of Ross's side project. And that is this year now certified organic. We've been through the transition period. And he grows more commodity style crop on that than vegetables. 65 acres is a lot of vegetables. And in terms of our soil health, we like to use green manures. We like to grow cover crops that fix nutrients back into the soil that we're stealing from the soil, growing our vegetables, and till those into the earth, and that's sort of it's like a carbohydrate, it's a slow burn, adding, we also add composted manures to our soil, and we try to get down into, what our soil might be lacking, because when you have healthy soil, your plants practically grow themselves. So it's fairly easy to see through your plants what's going on, and when we dig into the soil, we want to see a lot of worms and a lot of activity going on in the soil, and that's when we know we're doing a good job.
So I would say that soil health is really a never-ending journey. You never get to a point where you say, okay, I'm good. And so for me personally, I'm not certified organic simply because it doesn't really make sense. I'm able to build a relationship with my customers, and I can speak directly to them of how I'm growing my produce, and alleviate any concerns they may have of, am I using pesticides or spraying anything. They can come to me directly, and they can trust my word or come out to the farm. And at this point, it doesn't make sense. Maybe if all the other farmers get certified, I might. But for now, and in terms of knowing how to do that, sort of goes back to the never-ending process. Every soil is different, whether you're here or 100 miles away, and so you're constantly trying new things, whether that's cover crops, finding out what different varieties work well, and rotating and adapting. So I think that's something that is important, and a focal point of small farms is how adaptable we are. The little amount of mechanization and equipment we're using, if my fields have a large outbreak of some tomato fungus, I can just move it and rotate it to a different area, or I can stop growing tomatoes and plant something else simply by buying different seed, where it's not as easy when you're on a large scale. And so being able to rotate crops quickly and adapt to different conditions, whether it's pests or diseases, allows me to sort of observe the health of my soils.
We never went through the hoops, I guess, of becoming organically certified, and you can probably speak to the fact that it maybe feels a bit like you have to jump through several hoops. Thor and I talked a lot about that possibility. It was an ongoing discussion, especially as we tried, as we're selling food out to the community and approaching markets, local markets, grocery stores with our food, and whether or not it was certified organic. And I think we always came back to the idea that certified organic is wonderful for knowing that we don't have to deal with pesticides and fungicides and all sorts of stuff like that that we don't want in our bodies. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that I think we as small scale farmers do so much more in the way of soil health even than large scale organic farms. Think about the really large monoculture greens farms out in California and how they're just planting the same item year after year, and And we, with our small scale farms, really go out of our way to make sure we're using the right kind of green manures and the right kind of cover crops and restoring the health of our soil. And that just seems so much more important than getting certified, especially when we're selling at such a small scale.
Questions? Yeah, Dick.
By rotating your crops quite a bit and adapting and so forth, does this create any marketing problems at all for your goods?
The question's about rotating crops, and does that cause any issues with marketing?
I wouldn't say so personally. I mean, we have a 13-acre farm, and we grow on about 3 acres. So we do take some portion of our land out of production, so we can grow cover crops and those sorts of things to regenerate, but we can put new parts of the farm into production. And that's kind of our rotation, is to try to maintain the amount of produce that we need to meet our markets. So we sort of have everything planned out before we set foot in the field in the spring, like most farmers do. But we order our seed and our supplies, and we kind of map out where we're going to plant everything and how much we're going to grow. So I think that's basically what we do to deal with rotation. Some years we try to grow more of certain crops than others, or we don't have space available to grow certain things. But it's a balancing act and a dance, as Jaclyn says. So yeah.
I would say I don't at this time have problems with that, because I think at the scale most of us are at, the market is pretty adaptable to what we're growing. And so because we're not growing such large quantities of specific crops, it doesn't turn into a situation where we have such a large bumper crop that we can't get rid of it somewhere. So I think for at least the scale I'm at, I can rotate everything and still have enough space for everything that I'm planning and wanting to grow, and being able to find a market for that locally.
Awesome. So we're running short on time today. I'm sure there's lots of questions folks would still like to ask. But we like to wrap up every first Friday by asking you guys to share what we can do to support you. We've got, I think, well over 60 people here today, and then we'll be recording this and sharing it on social media. So what can our community do to support your farms and small-scale local farms in general?
So what I would ask is, I think often the local food community can, whether it's here or anywhere else in the country, can become insular at times. We can do a lot of talking to ourselves, the people that have already bought into it. And so what I would ask is that you share the joy and deliciousness of local food with someone that may not be familiar with it, whether it's a family member or a coworker. I think there's so much opportunity to reach a broader audience, and I think there's a lot of people out there that don't know the potential of local food in this region. I think a lot of people think we only grow grain and corn and soybeans around here. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to bring some local food to a lot more people.
I would encourage people to talk with elected leaders, policymakers, and your local level and the statewide level, and try to convince, especially on the North Dakota side, try to convince people that there are more supports needed for small-scale growers, for new and beginning farmers. There are so many hurdles: access to land, access to funding to get started or keep going or grow, and something that's near and dear to my heart, access to affordable health care. We are self-employed people, and we work hard, and we really drag our bodies literally through the mud, and we don't have access to affordable, good quality health care in our current system. And so I would really encourage you to talk to people to get those supports in place, so we can invite more people to farm. We need more farmers, and we can keep the people that are farming going when they start to have families and things, and suddenly they think, I need health care, I need to retire, I need these same things that other people are having in their 9-to-5 office job. And so I would really encourage you to help us push for those things.
I guess I would echo what Amber said, but I would, go a little bit further and say, one of the greatest revolutionary acts that you can do is grow your own food. Look what Jaclyn is doing at her house in Moorhead. I mean, it's incredible the amount that you can produce yourself on a small piece of land. I mean, we're desperately in need of new farmers. That we're losing farmers at an alarming rate. And things like trade wars and that don't necessarily help the situation, but we really need more farmers and people to take that risk and maybe make it. It's not such a good a horrible career path. You get to be outside, you get to put your hands in the dirt. Very Jeffersonian sort of lifestyle in some ways, but we desperately need people to farm.
Yeah. We left. Sadly. Seriously. We left because it didn't do what we need it to do. We love doing it. We cannot stop doing it. Everything in us has to do it. But we had to get full-time jobs. We did. Thor's not here because he's at NDSU, where he works in the wheat department. All he wants to do is dig in the land and put food on your table. That's what calls to him. So, be ethical, be political, be moral, stand up, speak for food. Put local food on your table. Put local food in your bodies. Promote it. Help farmers stay farmers. Thank you.
Can you all please join me in thanking our panelists today?